Welcome back to Horse Trainer Red and Green Flags Part 2 with flags 3 through 5.
So, flag number 3, as I previously mentioned, is the 30-day training. Now, this is more of a personal red flag for me. Everyone has their own opinion on the 30 days, but for me, as I mentioned before, it is not enough time. It's barely enough time to really evaluate or establish any routine for that horse. 30 days barely gets you anywhere, regardless of whether you're doing once a week or 5 days a week or 6 or 7, right? You can build up the muscle, you can build up their stamina and their condition in 30 days decently, yes, but you're not going to get a good training routine going in 30 days. And most of the trainers, in my experience, that have, or let me rephrase that, most of the horses that I have gotten for problem solving generally, refreshing or restarting, have had a 30-day trainer or something along those lines, and coming from ones that are like, make really big promises for 30 days and they rush the horse. They're generally really abusive in their tactics, not always, but generally are. And there's a lot of holes, a lot of missing pieces in that horse's education, in that horse's training, and generally it then takes even longer to rebuild all of that broken and cracked foundation because it was badly done. Trainers that promise a lot in 30 days rush the horse, miss a lot of things, and generally they're okay working that horse and doing that for that horse in 30 days. And if it was that person's horse, they could continue on and do whatever and fill in all those cracks. I prefer to have solid foundation and build up from the ground, but they can do all that because they're the trainer, they know that stuff. But if you're doing a training, if a person's training for an owner or somebody who cannot do that, or just either doesn't have the skill sets, doesn't have the strength or ability anymore, or for whatever reason, it is our job as trainers to mold and model this horse for their owner, for what they can do. So for example, I am predominantly a dressage trainer and rider, but I do a lot of all around and different things. But I start horses. That has been my specialty, is starting horses. And so I start for any general thing. I'll do Western and English on horses and just walk, trot, canter, turn, halts, all of the basics. And I have a couple that wanted Mustangs, and they've been working with me for a few years now, and they understand that with them being first-time horse owners and still pretty green themselves, it was going to be a long-term process and project for them. They understood that, and their horses were pretty young when they got them, so we didn't start them under saddle right away, and they got them from holding everything. So even after they were tamed, they weren't started under saddle right away. They spent a lot of time on the ground, and they learned a lot of the groundwork and different things and building up. But I'm not training these horses to be fancy. I'm not training. These people don't need that. They don't need fancy broke. They just need to be able to ride them comfortably, understand how to use their body, and understand how to get the horse to respond to them and how a proper response is. You can see my dog in the background here playing with a horse ball of all things, because she's a house horse and she steals those all the time. So here's the cute distraction. Come here. It's a cute distraction. Her name is Jinx. Hi, puppy. Okay, go back to your bowl. Excuse you. So, as I was saying, I'll put a little bit more on them as time goes, but I'm taking more time to develop that on them because their owners aren't going to understand that and need that right now. The owners are learning how to utilize their seat and be softer in their own seat, in their own hands, and learn to ride comfortably on a loose rein, and to, again, utilize their seat to change what they want. So these horses don't need anything special right now. That can come much later, because they need what their owners need. They just need to understand what their owners can do, and that's my job, that's my responsibility, to have that and not to overtrain the horse to where the owners can't really recreate what I do. Now the owners also take lessons and everything too, so they travel up for work as well, so the horses get a bit of extra time with me in the training and everything, and then the owners come and they get their lessons and they learn how to work the horses and do all of that. So that is. So green flag number 3 is the appropriate timeline for the horse for training, at least more than 60 days. I prefer, more than 90 days myself, and really, depending on what the owner wants, it could be a lot longer than that, but it really just depends on what the owner wants. Now, the caveat for me, at least for the 90-day portion, is if the owner is a well-educated and good rider already, and they actually know a lot and they know how to ride and they can put everything together, but they just need a little bit of extra help with their horse, or a little bit extra something else with the trainer and everything else, or the trainer knows just a bit more than the rider, that's fine. I am fine with, about 60 days. I still do not like the 30 days. It's still not enough. You're just barely getting anywhere with the horse. Whether it's developing muscle, developing the understanding of certain techniques, and establishing any routine or specifications within whatever discipline they're in training for. So that is the caveat to that, and also the green flag number 3 with training is the longer periods of training. It also allows for not rushing the horse. So red flag number 4 is an unwillingness to allow owners to observe training. Also, too, and there's a little bit of caveat to this other part on it, but along the same lines of observing training, not just training the owner's horse, but them training horses in general, especially if they're interested in looking in working with a trainer. They want to see how they work a horse, how they ride, how they do things, if it aligns with what they want. And if a trainer is not willing to allow that, they're not necessarily trustworthy. Now, the caveat being is that sometimes, particularly in private barns with the trainer and the owner being the same person, and them having very few staff or something, just what they need, basics, they might be less likely to have just anyone show up to observe and everything for liability reasons and busy schedules. So along those lines, there is some caveat to that. So it's not always necessarily that they can't, them not allowing you to come and watch them work other people's horses. And sometimes other clients don't want just some rando watching their horse. It can be how they are. So there's caveats to that in there, and things to think about when looking for it and wanting to observe how a trainer works their horse and rides, to understand that, particularly with private barns and privately owned barns and manage and training, there might be a little bit of that. So depending on timing, liability, and different stuff, it can be a little bit iffy about that. So keep that in mind, keep that with a grain of salt. But in general, especially with the owners having the horse in training and the trainer not wanting that owner involved, that is a huge red flag, in my opinion, with that. You should want the owners involved. The owner needs to be able to know how to work the horse, how the trainer works the horse, and the trainer should be pretty effective in communicating that. Not every trainer is a good instructor, and that can fall into red flag-ish territory, because you want to be able to help the rider, help the owner handle and ride their horse. That's generally speaking why they have the horse. Now, you can have the owners that are more hands off and just kind of have it for whatever reason, and it's always in training. But generally speaking, if you are searching for a trainer and you want something and you want to be involved, you want to learn how to do this so that you can work the horse. It's one thing for me to be able to take a horse that is spooky or whatever and help them relax and calm down, but if I can't tell the owner how to do that, then I am not a very good trainer in the sense that I'm not allowing, but kind of went off on a tangent here for a moment, but sorry. Also getting distracted again. However, if I were not to allow an owner to watch me work their horse, I am not instilling confidence in that owner that I am A, doing my job at all, right? I could be lying and saying I'm getting the horse out and not actually doing it and just pocketing the money, which is very unethical, right? B, I can easily hide abusive tactics, abusive techniques, and it's a very sleazy, unethical thing, right? Um, Two, if the horse is in bad condition, again, uh, bad training, abusive training, but also bad care, right? If the horse losing condition, they're not doing well. But it's also not allowing the owner to, I lost a word. Okay. Sorry. My brain decided to just delete that train of thought for a moment, and I had to scramble to get it back. What I was trying to say is that not allowing owners to observe and not being transparent in what kind of training is going on, what I'm doing, and how I'm doing, and everything else, it disallows the owner to hold the trainer accountable for their promises, for their actions, and ultimately for the outcome of training or the lack of outcome. That is red flag number 4, an unwillingness to let owners observe training, as well as not wanting to answer any questions or keep the owners updated on how things are going. It's not every owner can be there all the time, and not every owner can make it out, and sometimes you have owners that send their horses a little bit further away or out of state and everything. So keeping the owners up to date and in contact, right? That goes back into communication as well, is important as well. Okay, green flag number 4 is encouraging and wanting owner involvement, right? Sharing what they can. And in the communication part of this that I've talked about before, being open and honest and communicating with everything, I do want to have the caveat that, like, as much as we might try as trainers to constantly update our owners on their horse's progress and how they're doing and everything, a lot of times we forget. We're very busy, so don't feel bad about asking us how something went, right? A trainer should never make you feel bad. That would be a red flag too. If you ask about how your horse is doing and they get annoyed or bothered or they don't even answer you, right? Now, the caveat being on that of not answering is ask them again and in some amount of time. Let some time pass, especially if you ask like in the morning or earlier, middle of the day or something. Because a lot of times, like for myself, I'll see the message and I'm like, okay, I gotta answer that and everything else, but I ignore the notifications on my phone and everything. I'm doing whatever, and by the end of the day, I've completely forgotten about that. It is just flittered out of my mind and is gone. So if I don't answer right then, or sometimes what happens is I answer in my head, in my mind, but not actually in real life, not physically answer the question or the update or anything. So sometimes I will think that I did respond or think that I gave an update and I didn't. So and my clients know that about me. They learn that about me and everything else. So, and they know that I have no problem with them reminding me or bugging me, like, hey, how's it going, what's going on? And I don't have a problem with that because I know that I can be forgetful on that. I'm just really busy and I just move along and I go from task to task, and if I go from one to the other without completing one, I will forget about something, and that's just how it is. So for myself, I tell them just, hey, just keep asking. Give it a couple of hours. Give me, a couple hours at least to potentially respond and everything else. But if you don't hear from me, then ask me again. Be like, hey, did you get my message? Whatever. Because sometimes I don't get messages. It's not that common of a problem anymore. with the current phone and email technology that we have, but in the past I have had issues. And there's one client that I have now, more actually with lessons than training their horse and everything, but teaching their child, that for whatever reason I will still sometimes have problem with receiving their messages, and they will have problems with receiving my messages to them. It's wild and bizarre, and we have not figured it out. We're like the only one. But it's just one of those things where it's like, hey, did you get it? Do you remember? You know. So your trainer should be fine with you asking them about it, right? Give them some leeway on responding, right? Don't wait only 5 minutes and be like, hey, right? Give a good amount of time, a few hours. You can go up to a day. I wouldn't go too much more than a day without asking again for an update, but things along that line is that they encourage your involvement in some way. They want to keep you updated. They want you coming in and working with it, especially if the goal is for you to ride your horse and do stuff with your horse, right? Again, like I said, there's some owners that are a little bit more hands off. They're not, wanting to ride or do whatever, or they can't for some reason. That's whatever, but they're still involved in some way. They still get updates. They still come watch different things. So there's that involvement and encouragement of the involvement, and then the education part of it, and teaching the owner in some way, explaining things, whether or not it's hands-on teaching or just talking about it and explaining things to help them understand why they're doing something, what's the reason behind it, what are they looking for, what response do they need from the horse, and how overall that's going to help the horse, how overall that is part of their training, what is it for, especially if the owner doesn't know. Red flag number 5 for this video is a lack of individual training plans for each horse. So every horse is different. Every horse has different needs, different abilities, and different things like that. A trainer should be able to be adaptable for what each individual horse needs. Now, for example, I have a client that has 4 young Andalusians.
Of all those 3 Andalusians, this one here in the photo is Octavia, and she's one that I've had to adapt my training plan to really fit her, specifically because she's very, very worried and concerned. She had no real confidence or anything. There's a lot of different stuff that I had approached differently. One thing in particular would be lunging. So in the round pen even, I could not have her off the lunge line because she would just run herself into dripping, lathery sweat and still be worried, still be wanting to run even though she was tired, and that was not a good thing. Because I can't have that. I can't work a horse like that, and I can't actually train or anything. So I just kept her on a line for a long time and just asked her to move. And every time she did more than a walk, I just turned her in, made her wait, and then went again and again. And we did that for a few months before finally I was able to let her off the line. Now she still ran around and didn't really relax, but I was finally able to just be there and teach her how to relax without having any pressure on. Because one of the other things with her is she's not the type that you could do, you could change directions to slow her down. It would just keep her being on high alert and high energy and just in that kind of state of worry, as well as just running around and trying to get her to quote unquote join up. That didn't work for her either. I had to approach it the way that I did and in a way that worked for her. And it was kind of an experiment too, because, I'm learning her. I've had her for a few months and everything at this point, and I had to learn what worked for her and adapt myself to help her. Now she can be turned loose in the round pen and she will move around, she'll do different stuff, but she always comes back and checks in with me. But that took about 3 months before she was at that point. Here we have Octavia again to kind of help go over green flag 5 of individualized training plans. So just as I talked about in the previous red flag version, she needed a different tactic in training. So in this lunging here that you see, she's kind of going around. She's not really paying attention to where I am. And this is a little bit older of a video. She's a lot better now, but she just needed to find that relaxation. And then she starts to come in, and then she kind of like, oh, wait, no, never mind. So she just had to learn a little bit on her own. But this just shows that as a trainer, you need to be able to be adaptable to whatever horse you have, whether they're hot, whether they're lazy, quote unquote lazy, whether they're lack confidence, whether they have a lot of confidence and they're a dominant horse, right? You can't strong arm a dominant horse. You're just going to make things worse. You're not going to make it easy for the owner, and you're going to have fights and arguments and different things. So red flag or green flag 5 is having that individualized training plan. And in that same vein, being able to adapt your training plan each day you take the horse out is going to be different. And hopefully it's always progress. That's important. But there are going to be some times, days, weeks, a month maybe, where you have to do something completely different because of what that horse needs. For example, one of the other horses within this group of 4 that I work here at this place, recently needed to just be on groundwork for a while because she had some soreness in her back that needed to be addressed by the chiropractor first. Thanks for watching, and let me know in the comments what are some other red flags and green flags that you look for when you're looking for a trainer or have previously looked for in a trainer.